From Mike Cernovich. We have an initial tweet from J. Michael Waller who said, not even the Soviet Communist Party did this type of legal weaponization during its last years in power. Mike Cernovich says, right, we are in the early stages where Bolsheviks are shoring up power. The Cold War analogies don't hold up. We are in the, quote, the Tsar and his family are massacred phase of history. I'm curious what you guys think. Because obviously, I probably still trending on Twitter. I was trending all day for saying for like the 800th time you were in a civil war. But this one time, people were shocked that I said it. Oh, come on, it's a meme. But I don't know if civil war is a fair way to assess it because we may not be in active war, as some people describe it. But I think at the fundamental definition of multiple factions fighting over control of government, you are certainly in something akin to that. And many people said, well, maybe it's a cold civil war. And that's a fair point as well. Or it could just be a Bolshevik communist or communist revolution.
I've said a bunch of times, I think that we're in the middle of a cultural revolution in the United States, similar to the one that happened in China. So
a communist revolution?
A cultural revolution.
Yeah, I know, but...
Communist, yeah.
Communists are involved, that's for sure.
Yeah, the thing is that it's not communists like, back in the day. Like, the philosophies have evolved. So this is a you want to call it neo-communist or something like that, neo-Marxist. That's fine because it's a new version. It's based, it's like there's multiple different kind of, it's almost like it's a religion, one overarching religion, and there's different sects of it. You know what I mean? So I'm not like, I know I've seen on Twitter, there are people that are upset that you said that and stuff, but it's like I've kind of felt like we're in the middle of not an actual civil war, obviously, because there's not, considerable violence in the street between warring factions, but we are in an information war.
But isn't there?
No, there's not. Like,
Not
there's
like
not.
this-
There's not.
Okay.
Because I'm talking about like actual gunfights regularly.
Oh yeah,
So that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And that's what the people that are upset. They're upset because civil war brings to mind gunfights in American streets, and that's what they don't want people to be referring to. And so I want to be completely clear.
Got it.
We are not in a civil war because we're not in. There's not gunfights over territory with factions fighting the United States government and fighting each other. There's an information war going on. I agree with that.
Cold Civil War.
Cold Civil War.
We're in
fine.
a civil war period.
Yes, those I agree. That I agree with, but it's not. There's not gunfights.
We've already had people killed.
Yes,
we've had numerous.
There's political violence. There's
occupations, autonomous zones.
Yep.
Weaponization of government by one faction.
One faction arresting their political opponents. Okay. All of this, that's why I said earlier today, all the stuff that's happening here, people that are outside of the United States context, outside of the Western context, when they look at us and they see, one political party is persecuting their opponents, they're arresting people, they're charging as lawyers, blah, blah, blah. They see that and they are like, that is all banana republic shit. And no matter how much Bill Kristol and the morons at the New York Times want to shove their head in the sand and swear up and down that America's different, the rest of the world sees right through their horseshit, right through it, because only unreliable, and furthermore, again, the fact that this makes America look unreliable only hurts the dollar when it's never been weaker, when we've never had more debt, when we've never had well, it's been a long time since we've had the type of income inequality that we do have in the U.S. There are a lot of problems that all of this stuff only makes worse. So I don't see.
Stephen Marsh says that we're in civil strife, which is the period that occurs right before a civil war happens. Civil strife.
Okay.
Civil strife is when you have, I think, what did he say, like 70 or more per year political deaths. And the U.S. is well beyond that. Most people just don't track these things. But what people also don't realize, and I have to say this every single time, there was a revolution in Egypt. 2 of them, actually, within like a span of a year of each other. If you went to the mall, you wouldn't know anything was going on. And because of this, people watch movies and they think civil war means you look out your window and guys in uniforms are marching down the street.
Yeah, it looks different.
Go watch the videos of the Syrian civil war where you see people walking around with groceries and going grocery shopping. Right. Like, people don't stop surviving and living and doing basic things like eating food and going to the grocery store simply because somewhere there's fighting going on. When I worked for Vice, we wanted to do this documentary on Syria. This is the peak of the civil war, because in Damascus, they were advertising tourism in the United States. We were getting ads for Damascus nightlife. And we thought that would be absolutely wild to go to Damascus and document how people were just living their lives while there's like sarin gas attacks happening 50 miles away. Highways being taken over. People were blowing each other up with shells and there's snipers everywhere. But in the city, you wouldn't have known for the most part. So because of I think condensed history and movies, people assume that there can't be any kind of warfare because the average person is going grocery shopping. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I witnessed in every place I've been to.
So does the southern border or any of the crime in any major city, any of that other stuff contribute to the current civil war?
100%.
So that's what I was saying.
So let's say this.
Because there is, I mean, the gun violence in Chicago and LA and New York is kind of civil war.
The southern border, I think, is the biggest component that people should consider when it comes to the escalation into civil war. Let's say that by hard definitions, we are in civil strife, as Stephen Marsh described it in his book titled The Next Civil War. He's actually he described himself as a multicultural democracy kind of guy and more in favor of the liberal worldview. So be it. And he says we're not quite in civil war yet, civil strife. Let's say that's the case. There's various scenarios that could occur which will lead us into full-scale civil war. And it's not going to be this ridiculous, I hereby declare, and banging a gavel on a podium. That's nonsense. What it's going to be is that groups of militia will start forming on the southern border because of the crisis. You've got an old man. Traffickers were crossing his property. They get shot and killed. I don't know if he's the one who did it. They arrest him. The guy, his own land, his own property. Traffickers coming across his property. He defends his property. They arrest him. He's going to go to prison. Eventually, you're going to have people say the federal government has abandoned us. There's no law enforcement down here, and the drug and human traffickers are running rampant. We've already had, what do they call themselves, the Minutemen in the past in various militia groups. Mm-hmm. At what point do they actually then just assert territory? And all of a sudden, this could already be happening right now, by the way, because these stories have been persistent for the past 10 years or so. Right now, there could be a faction of people on a certain point of the southern border, say Arizona. Arizona is probably a good state for it. That there's open barrierless border, and they don't recognize federal authority because the federal government's abandoned them. Like, I'll put it this way. They're not actively planting flags and saying there's no government. They're saying that doesn't pertain to us. I don't care. They then start acting on their own behalf. What happens when one of these groups sees someone smuggling children, traffickers,
which happens a lot,
all the time, and they stop these traffickers? A gunfight breaks out and they kill these guys. And then the federal government tries to arrest them. The thing about civil war is that it's not going to be, people have this view of civil war because of the American Civil War, that it'll be two factions who will all sign treaties together and various states will be like, we're all working together and shake hands. No. When in reality, it's going to be various factions within states. And if you take a look at how Syria devolved into civil war, it was various factions fighting the government, and they all had different perspectives and views and eventually started coming together. And I think that was the Free Syrian Army. I could be wrong. We could see something similar where you have pockets, you have groups that feel the federal government is derelict or is illegitimate. The indictments against Donald Trump at the federal level, if Trump is removed from the ballot, how soon until sentiment grows in various rural areas where they're like, we don't answer to you anymore. You are not the government. It takes only 10 guys or so to assert that ideology, that worldview, that if Donald Trump is removed from the ballot, then whoever's in office is not the actual government. Confidence shatters. One of the things I think they're trying to do with the indictments is to maintain confidence that their power is absolute. But that does not work. It never works. That just leads to rapid destabilization. The Soviet Union only lasted 69 years. Mm-hmm. Perhaps we get a Bolshevik-style revolution in the United States. Democrats and their crackpot neo-Marxists gain power, and it lasts 30 years. Who knows? Or maybe when that does happen, you will get various roaming factions of individuals in rural areas that don't answer to the federal government anymore, and the federal government can't contain them and starts to ignore them. People need to understand the amount of personnel in the federal government is not large enough to contain widespread unrest, not at the urban level, but at the rural level where people are just simply saying, we don't answer to you. Or they put up checkpoints, or they just outright stop paying taxes or something like that.
I mean, didn't they set up like, what was it, Chaz a thing? Remember when they set up that whole? Yeah. How many days did that go? Zone. The autonomous. I mean, how many days?
The George Floyd autonomous zone, I think, was like a year or two.
So why wouldn't that happen?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Drone strikes.
Exactly.
I mean, You can
drone
kind of
strike in a city.
I wouldn't put it past them, man.
Imagine,
yeah, right.
Imagine what would happen. And this is a point James Lindsay makes, that the reaction is the goal. That either they're trying to force you to allow perverts to groom your children, or they get you to react and claim you're hateful bigots, and they use it as justification.
That part.
Imagine the inverse. Imagine a group of right-wing conservative types who are peacefully occupying land that is controlled by the federal government. The Bundys, for instance, remember all that?
Mm-hmm. He's actually scheduled to go back to jail, I think, on Thursday or something.
Go back to jail?
Let me confirm that, but I read that. Yeah.
But and I don't want to conflate it necessarily. That was a different circumstance. But imagine there's swaths of federal land that are completely, unused, but it's federal land. And a group of guys are just like, we're going to start utilizing this. We don't recognize the authority of the government. What's the government going to do? Imagine they show up and drone strike, as Ian suggests.
Yeah.
That reaction will result in more people having their confidence shattered in government.
Ammon Bundy was arrested 3 days ago.
For what?
Defamation.
What?
And he was released yesterday.
Wait.
Can't
arrested
move property.
for defamation? That's a civil tort. That's not a criminal act.
Arrest warrant since mid-April after an Ada County, Idaho judge found him in contempt of court for refusing to show up to legal proceedings.
Interesting.
For nearly a year. So that he just got let out yesterday. Can't move property or large cash sums for 2 weeks.
Eventually, you're just going to have a community. I mean, you look at Rich Men North of Richmond, the viral power of the song, 10 million views in a couple days.
Wow.
Confidence shattered in government is what leads to civil war. Not a group of people who are organized and then sign a document and say, we hereby declare. It's when random people just say, you're illegitimate, get off my property. I'll put it this way. If a guy showed up to your house, let's say you got an acre in a suburban area or a rural area. And one day a guy being carried in what are those things called where it's got the sticks and the guys carry it and the guy sits in the middle? I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's say they're
like a throne?
Yeah.
It's not a throne. It's called something else.
I don't know the word.
They're carrying him.
Egyptian stuff.
He says, put me down, put me down. They put him down. He walks onto your property and says, you will now tithe. You will pay me 20% for I am your king. What?
All right. What are you talking
What are you talking about? No, you're not.
Right.
What if a guy walked onto your property, flashed a badge, and said that he was the neo lord declared of the current region or whatever? You'd be like, wait, what? Like, what's this badge? That would be a little bit confusing. Most people don't know what a comptroller is. So if someone shows up with a badge and says they're in charge, a lot of people right now are just like, okay. We still do have in the United States people being like, look, I don't know who you are, show me a warrant, but a lot of people just submit. The point comes when there will be a legitimate law enforcement officer from an agency no one's heard of or doesn't care about, or even from, let's say, like the FBI, and people just don't respect them because they feel when the FBI goes after Donald Trump in this way and they see on news that it appears to be completely political and illegitimate, they say, these people aren't actually enforcing the law anymore. Mm-hmm. Why would I? The only reason why you'd agree to do anything they say is out of fear of death. Well, there's a lot of people that don't. And that's terrifying. They don't fear death. Mm-hmm. So what happens when there's a morbidly obese 70-year-old guy who's posting online that he's going to take action against the government very serious ways that people should not do? Then they show up to his house. What does he do? The latest report on that guy out of Provo, Utah, was that he had a loaded .357 Magnum pointed at the federal officers. That's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. Now, I want to make sure I'm clear on this. There is a path to victory that is through the legal system, is by electing Donald Trump. They're not guaranteed victory. This is why they're indicting his lawyers. They want a reaction. Mm-hmm. They want people to get violent. Mm-hmm. They are desperate for it because people are shifting towards Trump. Trump is winning in the polls in many states. Like I said, over the past year or so, people went from being passively anti-Trump to passively anti-Democrat, anti-establishment. I'm not saying they're voting for Trump. I'm saying that they're losing confidence and they are desperate to maintain it. One of the only ways they get it is if Trump supporters go nuts. So they're hoping that by going after Trump, they get that.
You said an interesting thing, that they're not anti-Democrat, they're anti-establishment. And the establishment used to be Republican in 2006. It was George Bush's establishment, warmongering party. For whatever reason, these business bureaucrats behind the scenes now snagged onto the Democratic Party. Super delegates make it nice because they can just pick their candidate no matter who gets voted what. And people are tired of it. We're having a global revolution right now of artificial intelligence, of conscious, just the way people think since the internet's been developed, the way people interface with each other. And we need a government to catch up to that.
Mike Cernovich made a really important point. He said, did you know that the Republicans currently have a comparable majority to what Nancy Pelosi had when she was targeting Trump with all these proceedings?
The Republicans just have to have the nuts to do something.
No, Republicans have balls of steel. Don't you understand? Kevin McCarthy has ironclad testicles. People just don't understand. He's not on your side.
Yeah,
He is standing in front of your face with a shit-eating grin, smiling, saying, "I'm here for you," while holding his hand behind his back with his fingers crossed. It takes balls to look into the eyes of an American citizen, say, "I'm working for you," but knowing deep down inside you are lying, desperately trying to protect the uniparty establishment.
Yeah, I think also there's a shift too when you start to see what's going on in Hawaii right now and the negligence of Joe Biden and how they're responding to, the effort to get them supplies and money and like the local government. Like, I think that things that Joe Biden is also dropping the ball on is another push for people to be like, yeah, I'm just done with this guy. Like, Trump comes out with, a statement yesterday and does what, like 3-minute video or something about Hawaii. And people are like, why didn't Biden do this? And this guy's not even the president right now.
I don't know what the federal response has been exactly. I would like to know. But I feel like this is like a call up the Navy strategy where you like mobilize the Navy to protect and preserve that area of the United States, because not only are people suffering, 1,300 people still haven't been found, 70 people have been declared dead or something like that. The entire city of Lahaina has been burned to the ground for the most part. Not only that, it's a national defense vulnerability to have a broken area of your country that's not functioning. It's an easy target. So they need to protect it.
While your president is on the beach. He's on vacation.
It's almost like they're doing everything in their power. One of the things we talked about a few years ago is that they want civil war so they can abolish the Constitution, because that's the only way you do it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there's also a push to, I know that people are pretty aware that the definitions of words have been shifting considerably the past, 5-10 years. People have noticed that things don't mean what they used to mean or whatever. And there's a tactic in that too. If you can shift the meanings of the words that are in the Constitution,
then the law changes.
Then you can change the meaning of the law. If you can get general,
like woman.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And if the thing that was pointed out, I heard James Lindsay talking about this, but it was the land dedications that you hear. If you can convince people that they're on stolen land, then they don't own that property because it's illegitimately attained. And that means you're not protected. None of your rights are protected if you're on stolen property. That means you have no right to that property anymore. And so now I'm not saying that that's exactly what's going on, that that's the intent behind it, but that could be a very happy side effect that people could use to go after people's property.
You guys remember John Teeter? We talked about it briefly.
Tell me.
It was back in the 2000s. This guy claiming to be from the future.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There was a website, and it was, silly nonsense. But one of the things he said was that the country would fracture into 4 different regions controlled by 4 different powers. Europe would control a faction. China would control a faction. Mexico and Canada would split a faction. It seems to be silly nonsense, but I bring it up because I don't think a revolution is possible in the United States because the country is much too big. Mm-hmm. That's just it. You look at what's going on with the Biden DOJ ignoring Lahaina, with him, with his son and the corruption, with the DOJ going after Donald Trump. You're not going to get every state in this country to be like, well, that's legitimate. After 2024, here's my concern. There's not going to be a definitive winner. This is it could be like 1876 was the year where they were like, who do we count? And it'll be akin to this. Why? Let me ask you guys. Why should I assume the 2024 election will be handled better than 2020?
I think it would be worse.
Any reason?
I would encourage you to not to assume anything in that regard.
I feel like the fact that there's not all of the issues with COVID might be a reason to.
Well, they're trying to do that again, though.
Well, we'll see.
No.
We'll see.
Donald Trump makes a bunch of claims. There's ballot fraud, et cetera, et cetera. Why would I assume the Trump supporters would say less. I can't just no. The assumption is clear. There's no off ramp, as if you said earlier, Phil. The likelihood is that in 2024, you are going to have insane disputes over who are the official electors, because Trump supporters feeling slighted from 2020 are going to be out in force with, and I'm talking about lawyers, documents filed pre, during, after. And then you're going to have legal challenges to a certified slate of electors. There's going to be 300 legal challenges in the courts that aren't going to be resolved in time. And they're going to go, how do we count something that's currently in legal dispute? The judges would have to just throw all of the lawsuits off the docket, which they can't just do. My assumption is 2024 will be bedlam. I don't see Democrats and Republicans just being like, well, let me know what you think with the ballots, and then we'll see who the president is. You're going to have Mark Elias. You're going to have the NCLU. You're going to have various factions on left and right lodging lawsuit after lawsuit in various jurisdictions before, during, and after the election. And then what's going to happen is various different news sources that are at odds with each other will report various different things. And you'll have people in some areas being like, I'm hearing the Democrats won, but the Republicans have electors too. They're being, the state legislature certified the Republicans, but the media said the Democrats won. What's going on?
Oh.
Now, look, don't get me wrong. I mean, maybe nothing happens. I don't know.
Well, you said earlier that you thought it would be impossible for a revolution to occur in the United States. And I guess I got to define...
No, hold on. What I'm saying
challenging
is,
because of the size?
If D.C. was taken over by an occupying force and a military coup, Texas doesn't go along with that. That's what I'm saying. There's no point where the entire country just says, revolution, now we're under the rule of communists.
When I say revolution, I'm not always talking about a change in government and formate like a government, like from a democracy or from a republic to a communist state. I'm not talking about necessarily like that. It's a revolution is like a change. It means to turn forward. So like a change of the mind. I know this is like a Maoist tactic. We're going to change the minds of the people. But I do think that can be done for good as well. And it can happen quickly with the internet.
I have such a problem with that kind of like changing minds, because that's trying to manufacture consent or trying to get everybody on the same page. The ability that humans have to influence people is only either coercion or it's just through argumentation.
Well, what about
convincing someone or forcing them?
But what about when you perform? Like I saw you singing in front of like 10,000 people or something. Like it changed them.
Yeah, but there's no guarantee. Yeah, that's. I mean, you can entertain people. Entertaining people and convincing people to believe in your philosophy is totally different. And the idea that you could get someone just on a stage to use charisma to convince people, that's a bad thing too. Like, I mean, because like Hitler was super charismatic, but he was also a genocidal maniac, so you can't just say, oh, this person makes me feel good. Like I was saying earlier today, my philosophy is fundamentally an enlightenment philosophy, because I believe that we can interact with reality, we can see reality, and we can test things, and we can reason proper results. And if we just go by feeling and just by saying, oh, this guy really moves me, then you end up with Barack Obama. Everybody that voted for Barack Obama voted for hope and change. They were voting with their heart. They were voting, I believe in Barack Obama. I believe in people. I believe in hope and change because I am hopeful and we can change things for the better. Nobody agreed on what change was. Nobody did. But everybody felt real good about it. We need to have people.
We were coerced.
Well, I mean, we were. I mean, it was.
I don't know.
Some people could say
we're like, oh,
coerced, but it was lied to.
He's cool. He's a cool talker. He's a good talker. He's cool. He smokes cigarettes outside the White House.
Yeah,
I mean, this guy's awesome. I could party with him. I'm totally want change. I'm going to vote for him.
Yes, I mean that is true. The votes for Barack Obama were very much votes for his charisma and stuff like that. There were a lot of things that changed from when he was running to when he was in office and stuff. So. I mean, that is true, but you still we need to have people that we need to be able to reason, not just get wrapped up in we feel this way and we want to have this kind of emotional reaction and try to connect with people and convince them and get everybody fired up. I mean, you do want people that are motivated, that agree with you, but you want people that have reasoned their way to their decisions, not responded emotionally.
Do you think? I think, and I should say that if someone could stand up on a stage, fully charismatic, get everyone's hearts aligned, and then provide them a blueprint of strategy, technically, of how to solve the system, and put it out of their hands. They've galvanized the populace to focus on an idea, that's outside of the person, that could spark a consciousness. Right? It's not just the brain. It's like a whole, full body. You know, people start working out. They start eating healthier. They start having kids.
It's a cultural
I
thing.
think everybody's tired. I think Americans are tired. They're tired of being lied to by both sides. They're tired of being constantly gaslighted. They're tired of being promised things. They're tired of being locked up in their houses and lied to, coerced into doing things that they don't want. I think they're tired. And there's no way to go back to like, how can we get everybody on the same page? Unity. You're never going to get that anymore.
Because of the fatigue.
It's just, they're just disgusted.
There's a war weariness. I know. I've sensed it for a decade. Just the pain conscious. There's the dietary weariness that comes from overeating or eating crappy food that knocks your body out. It's hard to wake up in the morning. That fog, too much carbs, all that crap.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.